Security is one of the best practices which must be implemented in any technology service or any technological setup. Well, on AWS, there are a given number of technologies which you can use to secure your infrastructure or your applications hosted on the AWS platform. In this video, I'll be focusing on some key security services that can help you to build a good security posture on your AWS environment. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button right away and equally hit the notification bell for more updates on similar videos. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much, and I hope you have visited or you are part of the DevOps community. And if you're not yet part of the DevOps community, there is a link to my DevOps community in the channel description. You want to join the link to be in contact with other DevOps engineers and equally have access to some DevOps resources which I share to help us all grow in the DevOps space. Now, when talking about security on AWS, the very first service that should come to your mind is the AWS Identity and Access Management Service, the AWS IAM service. Now, IAM service is one of the ways which you can use to federate or to manage access to your AWS environment. Given you have a certain number of developers or different teams and you want to manage who has access to what resource which your organization has or which your organization is hosting on the AWS cloud, you want to use the Identity and Access Management service for that purpose. Now, if you're going for an interview and they have security as one of the key requirements of the talent which they are looking out for, you want to make sure you major on the AWS IAM service. Now, when talking about the AWS IAM service, the key aspects of IAM that should come to your mind. First, we have the IAM roles. Now, IAM roles enable us to give fine-grained access to users based on a given set of permissions. All right, you write these permissions using IAM policies, and the permissions specify which user has read or write or read-write access to given number of AWS services. So IAM roles and policies are one of the things which you must mention when talking about IAM. Also, you want to talk about the AWS multi-factor authentication for root accounts. So if you're having a root account and you want to ensure that it is secure, one of the ways which you can do is using the AWS MFA or setting up MFA for the root account. And also, you want to implement good strategies in your account settings as far as security is concerned with strong password policies, as maybe using uppercase, lowercase, with good password rotation policies and all of that. So those are key things which you must mention as far as IAM and security is concerned. Let's dive right into the AWS console so you know what services or what IAM services for security are been mentioning on the AWS console. And we are going to be looking at security services on the console. Like we mentioned, security is one of the key pillars of the AWS, and when going for an interview, you must have an understanding on AWS security. So the very first service which you're going to be seeing as far as security is concerned is the IAM service, where IAM basically is the Identity and Access Management service. So you can use IAM to manage access to AWS resources, and some of the top features which you have as far as IAM is concerned, we have groups, users, roles, policies, and access analyzer. So we'll get into the IAM console and then you see some of the key features which AWS has. The main features, of course, I mentioned groups, roles, policies, and access analyzer. So once you click on the IAM service, or once you click on IAM here, it's going to take you to the IAM dashboard, and with the IAM dashboard you have a summary of all the IAM related resources. You have a summary of all the IAM related resources which you have in your environment. So it gives you a summary of groups, a summary of users, a summary of roles, policies, and identity providers. You can equally see them here along these. And if you also want to manage account settings, you can manage your account settings at this level. Now, one of the key things which you understand as far as IAM is concerned is you can create users. Like if you want to onboard people into your environment, so you can create users. So here on the IAM, the key features which you know is users, where you can create users. And IAM user basically is when you want to give long-term credentials. So for you to create a user, it's pretty straightforward. You click on add users, and once you click on add users, they're going to ask the username. For example, let's say Devops with Mike. Now once you click on DevOps in Mike, they'll ask if you want this user to have access to the IAM console like we are having, and if yes, you can, you just want to create the IAM user, and they'll ask you to provide password. Probably you want to have a custom password, or you want the platform, or you want AWS to generate the password, so you can have a custom password, and then you can use users, or users must create a new password upon logging in. So basically, once you fill this information, all you need to do is to click on next, and the user will be the next Once you click on next, they'll ask if you want to add this user to a particular group, if the user is existing, or if there's a group. Perhaps if you have a dev group, a prod group, or a testing group, or if you don't have a group, you can simply create a group here and you add this user to the group, and then you can add permissions to the users. Basically, permissions are like policies, or you can create a custom policy which you add to the user directly. So once you have, if you don't have any policy, for example, if you don't have any group, you don't necessarily need to select this, but you can add maybe one basic policy. If you want this user to be like or to have administrative access, you can just select on administrative access permissions here, and then you click on next. And the next thing which you have to configure is basically to review. Once you review all of these requirements, you just need to click on create user. Once you create user, or once you click on create user, it's going to provision a new user in your environment. So they say the user has been created, Devops with Mike. They give you the console URL. You can copy this URL and or you can directly email the instructions for login to the user, and then this is the username and password. You can download these credentials, and then you can equally return to the list of users. So basically, well, they'll give you this. You haven't reviewed your password, so let me make sure. Let me continue, because I'll actually delete that user. Now once you create that user becomes part of your users. Now you can have groups, user groups, where you can group users based on the project which you are working on. You can create a group for prod, you can create a group for testing, you can, so these are different users. This is maybe, let's take for example the dev group. You might want to add DevOps in mind, which you just created, to that DevOps group, and you can have a given set of policies which you want everybody in that dev group to have. You attach such policy, and then you create group. That way you create a group. Anytime you want to add a user with these same policies, you don't need to provision new set of policies. All you need to do is to add a user to the group. And then the key features which you also have as far as IAM is concerned is roles. And a role basically is an identity you can create that has specific permissions with credentials that are valid for that or for short-term duration. So if you don't want to have long-term access to a particular resource, you can use roles to create that access or to create those conditions. Now once you want to create a role, all you need to do is click on create role, and once you click on create role, it'll give you some very important aspects. A trusted entity. Are you creating this role to allow services like EC2 to have action or to take actions in your account? Are you creating this role to allow someone to have access to your account? Or are you trying to have web identity or maybe trusted policy and so on? So the moment you are setting all of these are just ways to specify what the role will be performing. So assuming I want to have to grant access maybe to a particular service, EC2. So it means that for this role, anytime I attach this role to any user, I can even specify I want access just to, let's say for example, we've selected EC2. So let's take for example, want this user to have access only to auto scaling. So you have to select EC2 and you click on auto scaling. So the moment you select auto scaling and you take next, every time that's basic permissions which you've already added auto scaling. That's the basic permission which you've already added auto scaling permission, and once you click on next, it automatically gives this user the permission. You can review and create. You can give the name of the role where we've already given a name, and once you do that, you create a role. Now every time you attach this role to any user or any service or any identity, that user will have just the AWS IAM service role for auto scaling. So that is one of the key things which you must understand as far as security is concerned. It gives you the ability to give users just the necessary or the least privilege mode, where they have just the required permissions to perform operations on a particular environment. Now policies basically are the sets of permissions, maybe allow. Once these are all AWS managed policies, and if you cannot use an AWS managed policy, you can create your own policy, which you definitely have to select your services that you want to allow users to have access to, or those which you want to deny users to have access to. You can use a visual editor, or you can just basically create everything as a JSON file and upload the JSON file, or create a policy using a JSON file. So that's basically it about policies. Now as far as IAM is concerned, the next most important thing which you must understand is the account settings. Now with account settings, it basically gives you several aspects of your account. We have password policy. If you want to implement a password policy, you can do that in the account settings. So for example, this account has password policies that the password must be 8 characters minimum. You must have lowercase, uppercase, numbercase, alphanumeric. The password never expires, must be edited, and so on. So basically all of these are some key aspects as far as security is concerned. You can edit your account settings so that for any given time the users will have some particular conditions to meet. So this is security posture, or this is security discussion, which you can also put in your interviews where you've configured account settings. And then we have another very important thing as far as users is concerned. We can go into a particular user, for example the Devops in my user. You can configure certain other credentials as far as this user is concerned. Now, as far as this user is concerned, you can assign what we call multi-factor authentication. Now, with multi-factor authentication, only those who have multi-factor authentication assigned, or only an assigned MFA device will give you access into this environment. And then you can equally assign secret and access key for CLI. So if you want to use or access your AWS account through the command line interface, you must configure secret and access key. Now, if you want to perform code commit projects, like I mentioned in another video on AWS CI/CD, if you want to commit or perform code commit projects, you must create or upload an SSH key. You can equally create Git credentials, which you can use for your AWS code commit repositories, and as well you can create key spaces for your Apache, Cassandra, and so on. So all these are security postures which AWS puts in place to make sure that the least privilege, that means a user has just the right and the necessary security access for their given account. So you always want to summarize these and have these conversations during your interview or during your discussion on the IAM service as part of security. So that is it for the AWS IAM service. Now, the second security service which you must mention when talking about security during your interview or when studying AWS is to talk about the AWS Guard Duty. AWS Guard Duty. Now, Guard Duty is AWS service that helps to perform intelligent threat detection and monitoring of your environment. Okay, so if you want to monitor unauthorized access or misconfigured credentials and malwares in your environment, you want to use the AWS Guard Duty. So Guard Duty gives you the possibility to perform intelligent threat detection in your AWS environment. Let's dive into the console and see what Guard Duty looks like. We are going to be looking at the next security service, which is AWS Guard Duty. And well, for you to know more about Guard Duty, you come to the services section here and you just type Guard Duty, and it's going to give you some search results about Guard Duty from all AWS services. And as you can see, Guard Duty helps in intelligent threat detection to protect your AWS account and your workloads. So for you to know more about Guard Duty, you can have guard trails, you can configure dashboards for control tower, you can have landing zone setup, and you can integrate all of them with Guard Duty for intelligent threat detection. So for us to have more idea or for us to know more about this service, you just need to click on Guard Duty and it will take you to the Guard Duty console. Okay, once you're on the Guard Duty console, what we can see here is Guard Duty is intelligent threat protection for accounts and workloads. And basically, as you can see, you can easily deploy and scale for up to 5,000 member accounts. You can have accurate machine learning detection, you can have up-to-date threat intelligence protection, and equally tightly integrated for fast response. So these are some common use cases: protecting compute like EC2 instances, protecting AWS credentials, and then protecting data stored in S3 buckets. So this is one of the key security services you want to mention. Then if you want to start Guard Duty, since it's a paid service, you can try the service for 30 days free trial. So we are not going to be doing that because well, I don't have any use for that. We are not going to be getting to that now, but if you want to try out the service, you click on get started. It's going to give you the opportunity to perform threat detection in your AWS account for 30 days. So maybe let's click on get started. Once you click on get started, it's going to give you the opportunity or the possibility to enable Guard Duty in this account. And once you click on enable Guard Duty for 30 days, it's going to continuously keep track of the account. So that's basically it. It's going to analyze VPC flow logs, and now these are conversations which you can always have as far as Guard Duty is concerned. It's going to analyze your VPC flow logs, it's going to analyze AWS Cloud Tree Management event logs, DNS query logs, AWS Cloud Tree S3 data logs, Kubernetes audit logs, RDS login activities to generate security findings. So you want to mention all these, and it's because you're going to analyze Elastic Block Store volume data to generate malware detection findings. So Guard Duty is a whole service which you can really dwell on, capitalize, or give a lot of conversations on as far as AWS security is concerned.
So that is it for AWS Guard Duty.
So the next security service which you want to mention is the AWS Web Access Firewall, or the AWS WAF. Now, AWS WAF helps you to monitor traffic coming into your applications from the application perspective. So at layer 7 of the Open System Interconnect model, the OSI model, we have the AWS WAF that intelligently monitors incoming traffic get towards your application. And with the WAF service, you can definitely allow or deny given set of IP addresses from accessing your application. Similar to the AWS WAF at the application level, we have the AWS Network Access Control List, or the AWS NACLs. Now, AWS Network Access Control List as security services, or it's a security service that operates at the VPC level. And with this service, you can permit a given set of IP addresses using the allow or the deny role to specify which IP range has access to your AWS environment or not. Alright, so you want to use the AWS WAF for application security and the AWS Network Access Control List NACL for network security. And going further at the level of compute resources, you also want to implement the AWS security groups that have the right set of inbound and outbound rules that permit you to define which traffic gets or which set of IP addresses have access to your compute resources or not. So talking about security, again, we mentioned the AWS WAF, the AWS NACLs, and AWS security groups. Let's dive right into the console so you can have an idea on the WAF, the NACLs, and the security group service on AWS.
We're on the AWS console, and the next security service which we are going to be looking at is the AWS Web Access Firewall, the AWS WAF, AWS Web Access Firewall, the WAF service. And WAF basically is an opportunity for you to protect against malicious web traffic. So, well, I mentioned the other security service. You can see AWS Firewall Manager, AWS Web Architected Tool, AppFlow, and so on. But we are going to be looking at the AWS WAF service, the Web Access Firewall, as a security service on AWS. So all you need to do is just to click on WAF here, and it's going to take you to the AWS WAF and Shield dashboard. So we are on the AWS WAF Shield. We are on the AWS WAF dashboard, and you can see it protects your web applications from common web exploits. And well, you can use WAF for $5 per web access control list per month. You can use, so you can configure the role based on your applications, and these are some benefits which the WAF service has. And then these are some common related services which you can integrate WAF with. We can have AWS Shield, AWS Firewall Manager, AWS CloudWatch, and AWS Kinesis. So basically this is what the WAF service looks like on the console. You can configure your, well, you can start by basically creating a web access control list where you configure some intricacies as to the website or the resources where you don't want web access to, and you specify some of your roles. So basically you give a name, the description, the CloudWatch metric name, and then if you have some CloudFront distributions which you want to add, you can add it. You specify the region where you want to deploy this WAF, and then you're going to add resources, the resources that you associating that you don't want to have malicious access to. And after that, you have to configure the roles, which IP address has access, which IP address doesn't have. You can set the role priority, which role should run first, which IPs, or maybe should you first check these IPs before checking this next set of IPs before checking, and so on. So those are some configurations which you need to do, and after that all you need to do is to review and create. Now, as far as WAF is concerned, the other key thing which you should also understand is the IP set. So IP set basically is you don't necessarily need to be putting one and the same IP over, so you can group them as sets, and you can reuse them oftentimes as AWS, or you can use them oftentimes as a set. That's basically you defining the IPs which you want to have access to your account or not. Now, we also mentioned security groups as one of the key services that have to do with web access, or that has to do with traffic or IP address security into your network. So security groups support at the EC2 level, and well, they're available at the EC2 level and at the VPC level. So once you're on your VPC console, you can have access to security groups, and once you're on your EC2 console, you can equally have access to security under your network and security settings. So the main way to secure your EC2 instances often is using security groups, and then you can also configure security groups in VPCs under security groups. So basically, security groups, like we discussed, gives you the possibility to give a set of, or to specify a set of IP addresses that come into or out of your into or out of your resources. So for example, let's give a security group name Devops. Let's use Devops with Mike security group, and then you can give description. For example, allow SSH to developers. So if you want developers, so you can see say allow SSH to developers. Now SSH is a protocol which you can use to access your terminal. So now SSH operates on port 22. So if you want to add that security group rule, you need to just click on add the rule. Now are you saying that once you click on add the rule, you have to specify the type of traffic? Do you want TCP traffic, UDP, ICMP, custom protocol, or you want particular SSH, SMTP, depending on your protocol? So you need to specify the type of traffic. So assuming you want just SSH traffic into our resources, you need to click on SSH. Now SSH basically is operating on the protocol TCP and on port 22. Now which traffic source do you have or do you want? Are you saying that anywhere traffic is coming from the internet, you want to grant access, or anywhere traffic is coming from IP version 6 or from your computer? So if you say you want traffic from anywhere, or you can customly specify the port which you want to have traffic accessing your resources from. So once you click on anywhere, it means internet or traffic coming from anywhere in the internet will have access to your resources that are protected by this security group. And you can equally just add a simple description, and then you put the description as well. So once you allow this, you have SSH TCP port 22 as allowing traffic to anywhere, or allowing traffic from anywhere to our resource. So once you finish configuring this, you just need to click on create security group, and your security group will be created. Now once you create the security group, you can now use the security group to attach to maybe instances. Remember, this is here we are on the AWS EC2 dashboard, and on the EC2 dashboard you always see security groups, because instances or compute resources always can be protected using security groups. Now security groups is another very important security feature which you should always have conversations around. Now also, as far as security or at the VPC level, we also have the network access control list. Now security groups, like we said, is a compute level security tool, but if you want to secure your traffic entering at the network level, you can then use what we call network access control list. The first one, we had web access control list for traffic entering into your network, but for this we are controlling network entering or traffic entering into our network at the VPC level. So you can configure network access control list at the VPC level, and you can now configure security groups for your compute level security. Now once you click on create network access control list, just like security groups, you need to give the name. So for example, we give the name Devops with Mike network access, Devops with Mike network access control list, and then you specify what VPC, because like I said, it's VPC level security, so it's going to be securing traffic that is getting into your VPC. Now once you click on network or create network access control list, it's going to create the network access control list. Now once you have this network access control list, Devops with Mike network access control list, you can then edit inbound rules. Same like you can edit inbound rules, just like we had inbound rules for our security groups. Now with these inbound rules, the difference is you need to specify the role numbers. So there's a difference between security group and network access control list, one being stateless and one being stateful. The network access control list is stateless, meaning you need to, any traffic you allow inbound, you must allow the traffic outbound. Unlike security group, which are stateful, where for every traffic you allow by default already has the outbound rule. So for network access control list, you just need to add a role, and will be implemented based on the rules. So you can have maybe rule 100, you want maybe custom TCP IP, or let's say SSH on port 22, and you're allowing, and you're saying anywhere internet, anywhere or any traffic coming from the internet on port 22, the rule is allow, or the rule might be deny. So any traffic coming to your VPC on port 22, you're already going to configure if you should allow this traffic or if you should deny this traffic. So that is how you can use network access control list, web access control list, and web access firewalls WAF to control access into and out of your environments for a good security posture.
The next security service you want to mention is the AWS Secrets Manager. AWS Secrets Manager helps you to store your secrets on the AWS platform. So if you have some secret passwords, secret API keys, or secret URLs, or whatever the key is, database passwords, database credentials, endpoints that you want to store in the AWS cloud, the AWS Secrets Manager is a security service which you can use to effectively manage secrets on the AWS cloud. So when talking about security services, you must mention the AWS Secrets Manager. Well, let's dive right in to see what the AWS Secrets Manager is.
Again, we're on the AWS console, and one of the key services which has to do with the management of secrets, like we mentioned, is the Secrets Manager. So once you're on the AWS console and you want to search for Secrets Managers, and Secret Manager basically auto completes for you. Say Secret Manager helps you to easily rotate, manage, and retrieve secrets through their entire life cycle. So all you need to do is to create secrets, and key features is just basically management of secrets. Secret might be database passwords, might be database endpoints, might be usernames, and all of that, which might be part of your environment. So once you click on this Secrets Manager, it's going to take you to the Secrets Manager console. So here we are on the Secrets Manager console, and basically how it works is you can use Secrets Manager to store, rotate, monitor, and control access to secrets such as, like I mentioned, database credentials, API keys, auth tokens. It enables secrets rotation between your MySQL, Postgre, Aurora, or RDS databases, and it's pay as you go. It's a managed service. It's also you can equally relate it, or you can actually integrate it with relational database service RDS. You can integrate with AWS Lambda and Code Guru. So basically, for you to store a secret is $0.04 per month, and then $0.05 for 10,000 API calls. So once you store the secret, for every time you do an API call to use the secret, it's going to cost you $0.05, and then you can have a 30 days trial. So basically, for you to store a new secret, you just click on store a new secret. They're going to ask you what type of secret are you trying to store. Is it a credentials for an RDS database? Is it credentials for document DB database? Is it credentials for Amazon Redshift cluster? Is it credentials for database, or is it for any other API key? So assuming you want to store credentials for RDS database, you just need to give the name of the user. Probably just give admin, and then the password admin 1234. If you want to see the password, you can confirm by clicking the show password, and you see admin 1234. Now, what type of encryption? If you have, well, we'll talk about encryption. You have an encryption key, you can attach encryption to this password, and then you can maybe specify the database which this password will be attached to, or which this username will be used or in accessing. So once you highlight this, you just need to click on next. We don't have any database in our account, that is why you cannot have access to this. But for you to basically store secrets that will be used in accessing that database, you can create a database and then you perform this trial. So we have Secrets Manager to manage secrets stored in our AWS account.
Well. The next security service which you are mentioning in this video is the AWS Shield. AWS Shield, and AWS Shield is a service which you can use to prevent dedicated denial of service attacks. So if you want to prevent DDoS attacks that are coming or that is geared towards your applications, you can use the AWS Shield service. So AWS Shield service for denial of service attacks. And the last service for security which you must mention in your AWS interview, or which you must mention in interviews, or which you should learn if you're starting your journey on AWS, is the AWS Key Management Service, the AWS KMS. And KMS helps you to create, manage, and delete encryption keys that can be used to secure your data in the AWS cloud. Now, you also want to use this AWS, or you want to use these encryption keys to secure your S3 buckets, or data stored in your S3 buckets, or data stored in your Elastic Block stores, or data stored in your Elastic File system. So the AWS Key Management System, the KMS, helps you to manage encryption keys that will be used to secure your data that is being encrypted.
Again, we are on the AWS console, and we're looking at the AWS Shield service. AWS Shield. So you just need to type Shield, or you can type AWS Shield, and it's going to show you. It's still under the WAF So it protects DDoS attacks and malicious web traffic. So once you click on this, it's going to take you to the AWS Shield console, and AWS Shield is a managed dedicated denial of service DDoS protection service. So it provides continuous attack detection and automatic mitigations. And AWS Shield offers 2 tiers protection: the standard and the advanced. So if you want to go around testing it, you can subscribe to the advanced, or you can basically use the standard. Now the advanced gives you the possibility of paying $3,000 a month, and then you can equally add it to your AWS account or to your AWS organization, where all accounts connected to your AWS organization will have this protection. Now basically, for a small overview, you can subscribe to the Shield Advanced to get the benefits of the Shield. You must subscribe basically, and then you can set up protection for your CloudFront distributions, protection for your load balancers, protection for your elastic IPs, protection for your Route 53 and global accelerators. Now these are all methods which can be used to access resources in your AWS account. So the AWS Shield will be used to protect these resources: CloudFront distribution, load balancers, elastic IPs, Route 53 hosted zones, global accelerators, which are the entry points to resources in your application. So you always want to make sure you have a good conversation on the usage or configuration of AWS Shield to protect your load balancers, to protect your elastic IPs, to protect your CloudFront distributions, and to protect your global accelerators and your Route 53 hosted zone. So this gives you a more detail on some of the ways which you can use AWS Shield to set up a good security posture in your environment. Again, we're on the AWS console, and we'll be looking at the last service, which is the AWS Key Management Service, the AWS KMS. Now KMS helps you to securely generate and manage AWS encryption keys. So you want to encrypt maybe data in your S3 buckets, in your ABS volumes, or whatever data you want to encrypt. You can use the AWS Key Management Service, and some of the top features are with AWS Managed Keys, Customer Managed Keys, and Customer Key Store. So once you want to access this service, you just need to click on KMS, and it's going to take you to the KMS console. So we are on the KMS console, and you can easily create your encryption keys and control encryption keys around or across AWS and even beyond AWS platform as a whole. And these are some key benefits: fully managed, centralized key management, built-in auditing, no commitment, compliance, secure. And then you can use it with cloud HSM. You can use the AWS certificate manager and encryption SDK. So for you to create a new key, you can click on create a key by just selecting that, and then do you want a symmetric key or you want an asymmetric key? So if you want a symmetric key, or depending on the requirement, you can then specify, do you want to encrypt and you want to use the key for encryption and decryption, or you want to use you want to generate your own key or your own message authentication codes. So once you click on that, you can now start configuring some of the key things, defining key administrative permissions, defining key usage permissions, and all of that. So this is the key management service which you can use to manage encryption keys that will be used to protect your resources on the AWS console.
So guys, those are the key security services which I believe if you have a mastery of during your technical interviews, you have a good discussion as far as security on AWS is concerned. Watch the other videos to know more about continuous integration and continuous deployment services, on migration service, database service, and a lot more of other services which I'm covering to make your interviews easy and well, to help you if you're just starting, make your journey smooth. See you in our next video.